Long before the towering pyramids and golden pharaohs, the land of Egypt was a patchwork of warring tribes and fertile riverbanks. Along the life-giving Nile, communities fought over water, farmland, and trade routes. But from this chaos rose a visionary ruler, Narmer, later immortalized as Menes, who dared to unite Upper and Lower Egypt under a single crown. This unification was no simple handshake. It was a calculated mix of strategy, diplomacy, and ruthless conquest. Narmer's armies marched north, banners fluttering, while emissaries negotiated alliances with wary leaders. The double crown he wore symbolized more than power. It represented a fragile balance between two worlds, each with its own gods, customs, and traditions. The Nile, flowing like the lifeblood of the land, became the backbone of this new civilization. Its predictable floods enriched the soil, ensuring Egypt would thrive where others struggled. Cities began to sprout along its banks, temples and mud brick houses forming the seeds of what would become one of the world's most enduring civilizations. But even in these early days, shadows lurked behind the grandeur. Ambitious nobles, jealous chiefs, and rival factions quietly plotted, their whispered schemes hinting that the birth of a kingdom would be as turbulent as it was glorious. The stage was set for a civilization that would rise higher than any other, and face dangers from within as much as from beyond. With the kingdom unified, Egypt entered an era of seemingly unshakable power. The pharaohs were not just kings. They were gods walking the earth, living embodiments of Horus, and raw citizens bowed, temples rose, and monuments proclaimed their divinity for all eternity. Yet behind the golden mass and sacred rituals, the palace was a labyrinth of intrigue. Rivalries simmered among noble families, each vying for influence over the throne. Secret councils of advisors whispered plots that could topple rulers overnight. Some pharaohs ruled with absolute authority, yet feared betrayal from within their own bloodlines. Even the gods themselves seemed to be drawn into these schemes. High priests wielded immense power, interpreting divine will to serve their ambitions, often clashing with pharaohs who dared challenge their authority. Marriages, alliances, and even appointments of officials were less about loyalty and more about survival and advantage. In this delicate dance of divinity and deception, every decision mattered. A single misstep, a failed decree, a mistrusted advisor, or a secret rebellion could ignite chaos that would ripple across the kingdom. Egypt's rulers learned quickly that being a god on earth demanded more than wisdom. It required cunning, vigilance, and a heart hardened against betrayal. The kingdom shone brightly to the world, but behind every feast and festival, shadows of conspiracy stirred, foreshadowing that even gods could fall. In a world dominated by men, where pharaohs were expected to lead armies and wield power without question, one woman dared to seize the throne. Hatshepsut, born of royal blood but not the obvious heir, stepped into a role no woman had before, ruler of all Egypt. Her rise was a delicate game of deception and brilliance. Draped in the ceremonial beard of kings, she projected authority while quietly consolidating power behind the scenes. Courtiers and priests were forced to navigate her clever maneuvers, unsure whether to obey or resist. Temples rose under her patronage, trade flourished, and art celebrated her reign. Yet whispers of dissent never ceased. Hatshepsut's rule was a blend of spectacle and strategy. She led expeditions across seas and deserts, bringing back treasures that dazzled her people and strengthened her claim. But every victory had its price. Rivals plotted in shadowed corridors, allies questioned her legitimacy, and even her own advisors wondered if a woman could truly embody the godly power of a pharaoh. Her story is one of audacity, cunning, and defiance. Hatshepsut didn't just rule Egypt. She rewrote what it meant to be a pharaoh, proving that power could belong to anyone daring enough to seize it, even in the heart of a male-dominated world. Yet the seeds of envy and betrayal she sowed in the palace would echo long after her death, setting the stage for future dynastic upheavals. Not all pharaohs were content to preserve tradition. Some dared to challenge the very foundations of Egypt itself. Among them, Akhenaten rose with a vision so radical it threatened to unravel centuries of belief. He sought to replace the pantheon of gods with a single deity, the sun disk Aten, and in doing so, he turned priests, nobles, and commoners against him. Temples once filled with gold and incense fell silent as Akhenaten relocated the capital to a new city, Akhetaten, in the desert sands. Courtiers and priests were forced to abandon their influence, their sacred rituals dismissed as relics of the past. Families divided, loyalties shifted, and whispers of rebellion grew louder. Yet his reforms were more than religious. They touched governance, art, and culture. Statues portrayed the pharaoh in intimate human detail, a shocking break from the traditional godlike imagery. Policies disrupted trade and strained alliances. Every decision became a gamble, as enemies within and beyond the palace tested the kingdom's limits. The experiment ignited chaos that rippled across dynasties. While Akhenaten believed he could reshape Egypt in his image, he underestimated the forces of tradition, envy, and ambition. His story became a cautionary tale. Even a god-king could falter when daring to rewrite the rules. As Egypt stabilized after periods of religious upheaval, a new breed of pharaohs emerged. Warriors who saw the kingdom not just as a land to protect, but as an empire to expand. These rulers wielded both sword and scepter, their ambitions stretching from the deserts of Nubia to the Fertile Crescent of the Levant. Thutmose III, often called the Napoleon of Egypt, led campaigns that dazzled the ancient world armies, marched across hostile lands. Cities fell under siege, and treasures flooded back to the Nile. Yet with every conquest, internal tension simmered. Generals became powerful figures at court, some plotting behind the throne, while ambitious nobles coveted control over the spoils of war. Even as Egypt's borders expanded, the cracks within grew deeper. Maintaining an empire of such scale required cunning governance, and rivalries between provincial governors threatened to ignite civil unrest. Loyalty was bought with gifts and marriages, yet suspicion never faded. One misstep could turn an ally into a deadly enemy. The warrior pharaoh's reign was a high-stakes game of glory and peril. Triumphs on distant battlefields brought fame and wealth, but they also sowed the seeds of internal strife, reminding all that the greatest threats to Egypt were often not from outside, but from within the glittering walls of its own palaces. In the annals of Egypt, few stories are as enigmatic and haunting as that of Tutankhamun, the boy king. Ascending the throne as a child, he inherited a kingdom still reeling from the radical reforms of Akhenaten. Though young and inexperienced, he became the face of restoration, attempting to return Egypt to the gods of old while navigating the treacherous currents of palace intrigue. Yet behind the cheerful smile immortalized in his golden mask lay shadows of uncertainty. Advisors and powerful officials effectively ruled in his name, their motivations as mysterious as the hidden chambers of his tomb. Every decision, from alliances to military campaigns, was influenced by whispers in the corridors and secret agendas of those who claimed to serve the crown. The boy king's sudden death at a tender age sparked speculation that has lasted for centuries. Was it an accident, disease, or something far darker? Poison, betrayal, or a palace conspiracy? Scholars and treasure hunters alike have pieced together fragments of evidence, yet the truth remains elusive, buried beneath layers of history and legend. Tutankhamun's story is more than that of a child ruler. It is a tale of vulnerability, hidden threats, and the dangerous allure of power. His death not only stunned Egypt, but left a lingering mystery that would echo across time, haunting the pharaohs and enticing historians for generations to come. Beneath the glittering temples and bustling streets, Egypt's stability was often an illusion. The true power struggle raged not on battlefields, but within the shadowed corridors of temples and palaces. Priests, entrusted with interpreting the will of the gods, wielded immense influence, sometimes rivaling the pharaohs themselves. Conflicts between these religious leaders and the throne often escalated into covert plots that could topple even the mightiest ruler. Rebellion simmered in the provinces, fueled by resentment toward the central authority. Farmers, soldiers, and minor nobles occasionally rose in secret, their acts of defiance masked beneath the rhythm of daily life. Some revolts were brutally crushed, others vanished into the sands, leaving behind whispers of conspiracies that would haunt the capital for decades. Inside the palace, betrayal was constant. Trusted advisors conspired with foreign agents, nobles plotted coups, and family members schemed for succession. Every feast, ceremony, or council meeting carried the tension of potential treachery. A smile could mask deadly intentions. A friendly gesture might conceal a dagger in the dark. This chapter of Egypt's history reveals that the greatest threats were often invisible. While the Nile flowed predictably and armies marched to distant lands, the seeds of rebellion and betrayal